In my video comparison of some of the best webcams on the market, one of the webcams I reviewed was this one, the AverMedia Live Streamer CAM 513, also known as the PW513. I did not recommend this webcam at the time, and the two biggest problems I had with the camera were the color accuracy and the lack of manual exposure and gain settings. And I said that they might be able to fix this in a future firmware or software update. Well, AverMedia did just that, and they updated the software, cam engine, and they released new firmware for this webcam. I said I would make an updated review if they did that, so here it is. Is the $250 AverMedia Live Streamer CAM 513 now worth buying? Let's find out. So the updates to this webcam are on AverMedia's website. I've linked it in the description. The update notes state, in issues closed, fixed overexposure by default, image quality in brighter environments, fixed darker image at 1080 60 frames per second, new enable manual exposure and gain controls of image quality, and for new cam engine supports hotkey function. I'm going to focus on the first three. Actually, they should add another patch note. Fixed cam engine doesn't open. I'm not even joking. As soon as I heard about this patch, I went to turn on cam engine as fast as I could to get a bunch of footage of before so I could do some before and after shots. And cam engine just would not open. I couldn't open it by itself. I couldn't open it in OBS. I restarted my computer. I couldn't open it. So for a lot of the pre-patch footage, I just used the settings that you can change in OBS, the driver settings just by themselves. It lets you access the same settings. It just doesn't have like a cool menu. For this first issue, they definitely did fix this. Before, there would be like kind of a hotspot that you could not get rid of with this camera. If you tried to get rid of it, then it would make the whole image too dark, and there just wasn't really like a good workaround. I think it's actually better now that you can control the exposure and the gain. I think that makes more of a difference than the automatic setting. But when you set it to default, it kind of like drops the exposure down to about like -4 if it's really bright and you have studio lights on. And then it raises the gain a bit. Personally, I found it better to actually just increase the exposure to -3 and then increase the gain just by a little bit instead of like as much as it did with -4. I tend to get a more consistent look without the whites being completely overexposed when increasing the gain. So I think that yes, they did fix this, but it's still better to just use the manual settings. So we're gonna get a lot into that. Number 2, fix darker image at 1080p 60 frames per second. So they did fix this, great job, but they actually sold themselves short because not only did they fix the image as far as the brightness goes, it's a sharper image. It's way better. Like before it was like, I didn't even touch the 1080 60 in my last video, but it was super soft. You would like, all my freckles were like gone. Excellent job, AverMedia. Better image quality overall, much sharper, and it is brighter than it was before on automatic settings. But again, now the most important thing is that you can change it by yourself. For change number 3, new enable manual exposure and gain controls of image quality. So why do I make such a big deal about the manual gain and exposure settings anyway? Well, I made an entire video and I have an article linked in the description about how to maximize your webcam's quality. And one of the easiest and free ways to do that is just by adjusting the settings yourself. Exposure for webcams is basically how much light the webcam lets in before it produces an image. By letting the software control the exposure, AverMedia can make sure that the frame rate never drops below whatever they intended it to be. So it'll never drop under 60 frames per second if it's at 1080p, and it'll never drop under 30 frames per second if it's at 4K. But at the same time, since it's controlling that setting, it might drop it too low, like to -4 or something like that, and then compensate by increasing the gain. The gain is the sensitivity of the webcam to light itself. So not just how much light it takes in, but how sensitive it is to light. So it'll make the image just look brighter. The problem is when you increase the gain, you increase the grain and the noise in the image as well. So that's why so many people were complaining about having a noisy image, because the automatic settings would just increase the gain way too high. And there was no way to stop this. It's also the reason why if you have really good lighting, like I have 5 different lights in my shot at night, even if your lights are good, you'll have parts that are just too dark and parts that are blown out because you can't lock the gain in place. So for instance, before if I turned off my backlights, the camera would freak out, brighten the whole image, and then my face would be blown out. But if I turn them on full blast, like how I like them, then the image got too dark. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? So yeah, they fixed that, great job, and it makes a big difference both daytime and night. You'll really see it the most when there's a lot of light hitting your background or when you take that light away. That's the biggest difference, because it won't try to start auto exposing for what it sees in the background. You can just change it yourself and lock it, and then lock the exposure in place and then change your lighting yourself as it should be. So okay, so we have some really good changes so far. Better automatic settings in bright daylight, better 1080p 60 frames per second performance, manual gain and exposure settings, and cam engine actually opens now. But have I changed my mind on what is the best webcam on the market? Well, we'll have to compare it to this, the Logitech Brio, to find out. Okay, so here's the breakdown between these two webcams. The PW513 is sharper, it has a wider field of view, and now you can fine tune your image in both devices, as you should be able to. But the Brio has way better colors. I don't mean like a little bit better. I mean the AverMedia PW513's colors are distractingly inaccurate. So if we're just like looking at this image, everything is like kind of yellow. I just can't get the colors right. I'm either like this zombie color, like super like orange, yellow, or I'm like in the middle where I'm like really pale, or I drag everything back on the hue and then everything's like, all the reds are like hot pink. With this webcam, browns are orange, reds are pink, and blacks are blue. The colors are just... Now, there's still the same issue with both devices as far as the delay goes. I feel like there's like about 150 milliseconds or so, at least on my computer, of delay between the time that you move and by the time that you see the image, which translates to if you're recording like audio in like OBS and you have an external microphone, like, you know, like a Razer Siren Mini like I have right down here, then the audio is going to come a little bit before the video. You're either going to have to adjust it in post in the video editing software, which is pretty annoying, or you're going to have to do a render delay in OBS for your audio. But that's also annoying because if you start switching to different webcams, then it's like now it's off sync for all these different ones. And it's like, okay, that's super annoying. So ultimately, have I changed my mind on what is the best 4K webcam on the market? No. But if you actually did buy this webcam, I do highly suggest downloading the new software update and downloading the firmware and installing that, because now you have a functioning camera with functioning software, which you should for a webcam that costs $250. One warning before you update Cam Engine: there's this black bar at the top of the screen that I cannot get rid of at all frame rates, all resolutions. I just can't get it off. And I know it happened after the update because I have some footage in this video that I recorded from pre-patch and it doesn't have that bar. So, and something that's really cool about this webcam, I will say though, is that your settings persist past like a reboot or unplugging it. That's something that's really annoying with webcams for most companies, including Logitech, is every time you unplug it, you have to redo your settings every single time. Even if it's like, okay, I know that at night, I always want these settings. These are the perfect settings. I know my lights. It's like, no, you gotta redo them every single time. It's like, oh my God, that's so annoying. So I do like that about this webcam. I do still ultimately recommend the Logitech Brio over this, but I have updated my written review of the AverMedia Live Streamer CAM 513, and I've linked that in the description and the pinned comment. If you're interested in more stream tech gear reviews just like this, then visit my website, streamtechreviews.com. I'll see you in the next review.